Welcome to the channel. I'm David Poe. Today we're going to do a simple little beach scene. And so let's go over the materials very quickly and then we'll get started. We're using a panel. This is a 11 by 14 canvas panel. We are using for our paints Cad Yellow Light, Cadmium Red Light, Ultramarine Blue, Phthalo Blue, Titanium White. Then on this side of my palette today, we've got some earth tones. We're using yellow ochre, burnt sienna, and I don't know if we'll use this, but I've got a little bit of ivory black. As far as the brushes are concerned, I always use flat brushes for the majority of my paintings. And so I like to use sizes, especially for a canvas this size. I got 2, 4, 6, and 8. So 2, 4, 6, and 8 are the sizes. I'm using currently Utrecht 209. These are the hog bristle brushes. And then I also have added a couple of Princeton Aspens. And this is a number 2 liner. I sometimes like to do little foliage with this. It's good for details. And then also another finishing brush for little details at the very end of the painting as a number 2 round. Also an Aspen. I'm using the Coulter easel. This is made by Art Box and Panel. And one of the reasons I like to use it is it gives you a nice table basically on the tripod. This is a Slick U8000 aluminum tripod. It doesn't weigh too much and it's fairly inexpensive. And then the Coulter easel's two parts to this. Your palette box, which opens up, it has these side panels that you can also paint from or set up some other supplies on. And then you have the panel holder here, which attaches to the tripod. And then you can adjust these two pieces of wood as you need in terms of getting the right height. And it's also expandable. This is it can go from a very small panel to about a 16 by 20 panel. Okay, so that gets us through with most of the materials. Over here, I do have some Gamsol. I use the Gamsol Mineral Spirits, and I get it in the 1 liter container. If you live in California, I think this is the only size that they will permit that's shipped to you. If you live elsewhere, you can actually get a whole gallon of this if you need it. Keep in mind that these do tend to break down over time, and so I think that the Gamblin folks actually tell you to only buy what you may need within a year in terms of the Gamsol as well as the finishing varnish. Now, we're not going to get into varnishing today, but after the paint is dry to the touch, I like to apply Gamvar Gloss Varnish to my works. So once it's totally touch dry, I will use this. This is kind of what we might call a demonstration varnish. Some people like to put a permanent varnish over top, but actually talking to the folks, Gamblin's Gloss Varnish is really the only coat you need, the final coat you need for varnishing, as far as I'm concerned. And then you can always remove that with the Gamsol, all right? And by the way, when you do the varnishing step, there's a nice, Gamblin makes a nice varnishing brush. And they say that you never have to clean this, is just add the varnish to the brush, and that will allow the brush to kind of come back to life, and you're ready to do your varnishing. And I will say with my own work, that is the case. You don't have to, I wouldn't worry about washing it. Just leave it in a little container like this where you have the Gamvar varnish in it. And whenever you need to varnish your paintings, just put a little bit into a little container like this and then go to work. And all it takes is you want to make sure that the gloss varnish, or if they also make satin, it's a a flat base thing. So just make it as thin as possible over the final coat of the painting. Okay, probably more than you need to know about that, but sometimes it helps to know where we're going before we even get started. All right, so this is a number 2 brush, hog bristle hair. I'm dipping it into my Gamsol. I'm taking, hopefully you can see some of this now. I'm mixing the burnt sienna just a little bit on the palette here. And I'm going to sketch out the scene using this color. And I want to make sure we're going to have the land mass is going to be about 1/3 of this painting. So let me kind of get a horizontal line going for us. All right. We got this land mass that's kind of triangular in shape. So I think I want it to go a little bit further that way. So let's change that up a little bit. Okay. And then we got a tree line over here. Just kind of draw this in a little bit. And out here is actually more the river or the beach rather. We're doing a beach scene, not a river scene. All right. Now, so this is pretty simple. Up in the cloud, we're going to have some clouds and some sky up here. Could do this. We're going to sketch out lightly where the blue is going to go, where the darker blues are going to go. So let me just see a little bit of, there's more cloud, in other words, in this scene today than there is the blue sky. So I'm just kind of making a few little marks to let me know kind of where that sky is coming in. This is all sky over here is all sky. Okay. All right. Now that we got that basic sketch in, we're going to look and concentrate on our darks. So with the same pool of burnt sienna color that we have on my palette, I'm going to add some ultramarine blue. Mix that in with my burnt sienna. Get a little bit more burnt sienna on my brush. A little bit more of the ultramarine blue. And on the palette, it's almost going to look like a black, and that's what we want. But it's not, but I don't want you using your ivory black or a basic black for your darkest darks. The reason why is that it'll tend to look like a hole in the canvas. There's no color to it. Whereas this is dark, it looks black, but it will not look quite as black and dead as ivory black does. Another way to get a dark is sometimes using alizarin crimson permanent with ultramarine blue. That gives you a very dark purple. And that is also much preferred in landscape paintings than to use ivory black. In fact, I believe the Impressionists did not use ivory black. All right, so now I'm going to be looking at my sample over here at where the darkest darks are located. And it looks like they're at the base of this tree line, which makes some sense. So where I see that, I'm just going to go in there, varying the brush strokes to suggest where those darks are. So there's a little bit thicker over here and thinner as the distance. This is farther away from us than over here at this side of the painting. Okay. And let's see if there's any more. I'm not seeing any more at this point. Behind the easel, I've got my paper towels. There is a handle for the tripod, and I just put my paper towels right over top of it. And in fact, I also have a paper bag back there hanging on that same handle, so that way I can throw away the paper towels as I use them. So now I'm going to clean off my brush with one of the paper towels. Get that off of there. Then I can further clean them in my Gamsol. Wipe that Gamsol off of there again. And I'm going to put that away. Now I'm going to reach for, let's see, this is a number 6. You use that for now. And the next darkest dark is the greens. So there's a darker green and there's a lighter green. So we're going to start with our Cad Yellow Light. Get a nice blob of it. I'm going to put it on the palette here. You can see that. And now I'm going to add a little touch of the ultramarine blue. Mix that in. Obviously this produces a pretty light green. That's still too light for what I want. So add just a little touch of the ultramarine blue again. And a little bit more. All right. Now to me, this is going to be the color perhaps of the highlight is this green here. So I'm going to make it even darker using that same pool of color here. I'm not going to spoil the entire thing. I'm going to take a corner of it and mix in the ultramarine blue. A little bit more of the ultramarine blue. And what I like to do to make it look a little bit more like a natural color is I add a little bit of the Cad Red Light, just a little speck of it. And that will darken that green. Oh, I forgot my medium. I like to use a Galkit medium. This comes in a tube by Gamblin. This is excellent to speed up the drying time. What I like to do is mix some, and I already did, into the titanium white. I also want to put a little bit more, just a little blob right there on my palette. And from time to time, I'll dip my brush into it as I'm making some of the mixtures. You don't need a lot, just a little bit, kind of like, just a little bit like that. And mix it into that pool of color that you made. And this will help the drying time later on. Okay, so now we got this darker green and a lighter green. And I'm going to start by putting this darker green on. And the darker green is more towards the ground plane. So now I'm going to vary my strokes. I'm not going to go back over it. I'm going to trust myself. I don't want to fool too much with it. Lay it down and leave it alone is the rule. So here we go. I'm pretty much going to cover most of this area with this green, and then I can come back in over top with a little bit thicker concentration of paint when I do the highlights. Right now I just want to get that color up there on the panel. Another goal that I've got in mind is I want to cover the canvas. Colors are all about relationships. How one color looks next to another color. So do not rush the process. In other words, we don't really know yet if this is the green I want until the other colors are on the panel. I think we're close, but we can always modify later. And we don't need to concentrate too closely on one area of the painting, thinking we got to get this little section here perfect before we move on to another. Don't do that. We can get more detailed later on in the painting process, but for the moment, we want to keep it simple and basic. In fact, don't think of these as trees. I want you to think about shapes. Does this look like the shape that you're witnessing, either on the photograph or if we were outside today? Does it look like the landscape that you're personally looking at? And that's really the best way to paint, is to look at a live scene. You'll see more color, and of course squint your eyes when you're looking at the scene. That will help to give you a sense of the shape rather than the detail. And also, don't stare too long at any one place in the in your subject matter, because then what will happen is your eyes begin to adjust to the color, and then it's as if you can't see the detail anymore. You don't see the nuances of color anymore because your eyes have become so conditioned to it. It's better to kind of quickly glance at the scene and then come back to what you're painting. And you will be amazed at how much more color you actually see in the process of that. All right. Now we got this ground plane that's not as dark as this. It's right here near the bottom of those trees. And it's not quite, well, it's actually, it could be this color here that I already mixed on my palette. Let's try that first. And then I can always do something more for the highlight. So, I'm going to dip this a little bit in Gamsol. Go into my other green mixture here and see how this looks. And since this is a horizontal plane, grass is more horizontal. The trees, of course, are the vertical element. So I'm going to make sure that most of my brush strokes on the land are going horizontal. Once again, varying the brush strokes and not getting fussy with it. Maybe using some of the brush strokes to suggest some texture and distance. More. Now here, since this is closer to me, I can do a more broad stroke, suggesting that it's closer. And as it moves farther away, you see how you want maybe a shorter stroke to suggest that distance. At least that's how I do it. Whether anybody can actually tell that from staring at the painting or not, maybe you can't, but I certainly do. All right. So now as I look at that, and you notice that it's very close. It's very close. In fact, probably on the camera, you may not even be able to tell a whole lot of the difference. But that's okay. I wanted to show you that that's perfectly all right, because you're going to adjust these colors after you get the other colors on. Okay? And because we still don't know whether these are really accurate or if the painting is going to need a different shade of these greens to work well together. All right, I'm gonna put these in the trash. Come around here and get a couple more paper towels. And since this is a darker color, I'm gonna set this aside now. I'll come back to using that for this plane later on. I'm gonna switch to a pretty good sized brush. This one. This is a 4. It's not too big, but we're gonna mix up some blue. I'm gonna take some of this titanium white and get a big blob of it. And now I got a decision to make. Do I want to use the phthalo blue or do I want to use the ultramarine blue for the sky blue? I'm going to use the phthalo blue. Let's see if I can. A couple of these colors have been drying on my palette, so they're a little bit thicker than normal. Okay. Now looking at my reference force. With the sky, I kind of like to use this vertical stroke as well. And so I use that sketch to help indicate where the darker color in the sky was going to be. So now just kind of get the paint on there, and I can always sharpen that later on. All right. Go ahead and clean this brush off. But since we got blue on here, I'm now going to look at the blue of the beach. And I'm going to mix into my pool of the phthalo blue and titanium white some ultramarine blue. Add just a touch of the cadmium yellow to create a kind of aqua blue. Add some more of the ultramarine blue. Okay, I think I'm happy with that color. I already tell this is probably a little too dark, but I'm going to paint thin, and then I can put highlights, lighter colors over top of this. And I think that will work. So I'm just going to thin it with some of my Gamsol. Like I said, one of the goals in painting is to get the canvas covered. And I'm painting in a style called alla prima, which is all at once. Wanting to cover the canvas all at once with color. We're not using a bunch of layers. I'm not painting an initial layer, let it dry for a few days, come back to it and paint over top of it again. I'm really trying to get the impression of this scene as quickly as possible. And to let that stand as my memory of the experience of this one particular place and this one particular time. Okay, so we got this initial layer in, which, like I said, I'm not really happy with that color right now. And when I squint, all of this is blending together. So I need to change tonal values in that area. But it's easier to start with darker darks and then put lights in over top of it than to start too light and try to darken it up afterwards. Okay. Now, buried in here is a little palette knife. And I'm going to make some room on my palette to do the clouds. And in order to do that, I need to get rid of the other colors on the palette so I don't contaminate it. I just put a little bit of Gamsol on my towel. Use that to soak up most of this color. Or you could mix a whole new spot on a different one of these side panels if you are so inclined. All right, so now I'm going to take some of this titanium white, which has been there for a while, so it's kind of hardened up on me. Now, titanium straight looks too cold. It's really a cold color, the temperature. And in order to warm it up, what do you think we would use? Well, we would use a warmer color. The only choices we have on our palette are the yellows and reds. I don't want a pink sky today. I guess you could put a pink sky, but I'm going to put some yellow into it to brighten it up. So I've got two choices here. Cad Yellow Light or Yellow Ochre. Today I'm going to see what a little bit of Yellow Ochre will do. Just a little bit into my titanium white. And what that's going to do is it's going to warm the white. Mix it in there thoroughly. Maybe just a little bit more. That might be too much. There we go. When you're changing a color, always remember to start with very small amounts. Otherwise, you could ruin a whole pool of color very quickly. Okay, so now this, you can tell, is a different color than this canvas. This canvas is totally white, but this is more of a cream, and that's what I wanted. So now I'm going to take some more of that titanium white and mix a similar amount of the yellow ochre into it. So hopefully I won't have to keep mixing that color, because there's a lot of space for us to cover with this. And this already has a fair amount of my Galka gel in it. I'm going to put this right on. Okay, so now I'm going to take another brush that I haven't used before. This is a number 8 just because it's clean, not necessarily because it's so big. I want a nice clean brush so I don't contaminate this color with something else. I'll start on this side. What happened was the paint dried a little bit too much, so I'm getting little flakes of paint on my brush. Ugh. And like here, I'm not trying to be super careful right now. I may end up with a few happy accidents, right? And I'm certainly not at the detail stage, so I can come back in with some more paint over top. That's why when you start these initial layers, you want to paint rather thin. And that will allow you to have room to come back over top of these colors with thicker paint if you need to. I'm getting a lot of that dried paint on my brushes. Luckily, it's kind of falling off. Around these trees, I want to leave a little bit of room so I can nuance that. So I'm not entirely covering the canvas right there. Another thing to work on is that in these early stages, your painting may look ugly. And if you have folks coming by and looking, they might also think it's ugly or that you don't know what you're doing. Don't let that get to you. Oh, and this is a good time as any. If you like the content of my channel, please give a thumbs up, and would love for you to subscribe, and that way whenever I release a new video, you'll be one of the first to know, and you can take advantage of it. If you have questions or anything, comments, by all means, put those below, and I will try to answer them as quickly as I possibly can. All right. Now, it doesn't look like much right now, does it? Certainly doesn't. I'm going to come back in over the sky now with some grays and a little bit different blue. So I'm using the same pile, and now I'm coming in with just a little bit of the ultramarine blue, little bit of the burnt sienna. That's going to give us a nice bluish gray. I'm going to get a little bit more of the titanium white in there. A little of my Galca gel, mixing that into it as well. And now I'm going to look for where the clouds are a little darker. It's a subtle shift, and they look a little purpley. Hopefully you can see this shift. One thing we notice is that with painting, photography is not like painting, and photography doesn't always read color values correctly. And even in the videos, you may not see exactly what this painting looks like in real life because of that distinction. Oops. There we go. Take a step back, see how that looks. Figure out where else these colors need to go. And leave that like that for just a minute. And I'm going to turn my attention now to the greens on this shoreline. Get rid of that white. With the palette knife, of course. And get a couple more paper towels so we can work on the new scene. Boom. All right. Back to the green brush and to some highlights. Starting with the CAD yellow light, take a big blob, putting a little circle there on the palette. And we're going to put in a little bit of the phthalo blue. I'm going to darken it a little bit with the CAD red light. I want a lighter green, but I want a little bit of a reddish shade to it, I think would look good. Okay. And the sun is hitting at the top of these trees. And so remember where the places were that I left white? We're going to go in and we're going to start at some of those places. And it's good to hold the brush not like a pencil, but at the bottom. It allows more movement and manipulation of the brush, as well as some unplanned strokes that will give some variety here. I'm just kind of touching the tops of these trees and pulling down slightly. See how I'm applying that? Trying to make sure that I don't repeat too many patterns. Pull it down a little bit. There's also some more in this middle area of these trees too. So we're gonna just kind of pull down a few strokes, suggesting a little bit of that sunlight hitting on some of the shapes of these trees here. Just kind of touch and vary your stroke. There we go. All right. Now I'll take a step back, see how we like that at this point. And now I'm going to go back in with my dark, which is ultramarine blue and the burnt sienna. And I want to emphasize the darks again. Put those back into the painting. And for this, even though I mixed it on the palette with that brush, I'm going to use my little round. Trying to vary some of these strokes a little bit. We're too far away to actually see the tree trunks, but we are picking up subtly on some darker portions here where that's existing. Now, not quite as much over here because this is much farther away. All right. Take a step back. And there's a few places, of course, up in the tree. They're a little darker as well. So we're gonna just indicate those spaces with a few little details. Just once again, I'm basically just kind of touching a few areas where I'm seeing from my photo reference this contrast, varying the strokes a little bit. So it looks a little bit more like foliage. Then you even roll the brush a little bit and you can get that effect. There we go. Step back. Now there's a sand color. So I'm going to scrape my palette again. Save that over there. So I'm going to, I think the closest color is this yellow ochre. The yellow ochre, some titanium white, a little bit of the burnt sienna, okay. I think we got a good base color for it. And I can always come back and mix another color into that. And for this one, I'm going to use this one I use for the sky. I'm going to clean this brush off. Let's see, where are we on time? Oh, already an hour. Sometimes paintings go quicker than others. Yeah, a little bit of my Galkid medium. Just trying to vary these strokes a little bit and connect them. And now we need a little bit whiter color here. So I'm going to add some more of that titanium white. Okay, taking a step back, see how that looks at this point. And then interestingly enough, I need to add some paint here. So add some more titanium white. Take a little bit of that into this same yellow ochre mixture with some Galkid gel. And then we are going to add a little bit of the ultramarine blue. All right, I like that color there. There's this part of the sea that's a little lighter than others. So we're going to drag this down. Right, getting a sense that there's the clouds are reflecting down here in the water. Okay. Now we're gonna be adventurous. Taking a chip brush. This is a 2-inch chip brush, and I'm gonna pull the shoreline, and just to see what it's gonna look like. I could ruin the painting doing this, but let's see if I can get some different effects here. Lifting it up at certain places. I think I kind of like that. All right. It's just with a dry brush, just moving that paint a little bit. clean that chip brush off. And I also want a little bit more fluffy clouds. So take the same brush after I cleaned it off and dried it off. I'm going to just pull it through. There, I got a couple of those drier specks. I don't necessarily want those on there. Add a couple strokes like that. Okay. Now, I'm going to take my fresh titanium white and I'm going to put highlights into those clouds. A couple more of these paper towels. Take my sky brush, clean it off in the Gamsol. Clean up my palette again, scrape that off of there so I can get a nice pure white. And this is going to be the last of the clouds, so I want this to be pretty white. Take the titanium, big blob, mix in some Galkyd medium. Now I want to be a little thicker with these strokes. These are hopefully going to be the finishing touches. And where do I see the lightest lights here? Reminding myself as I'm painting this now, put it down, leave it alone. Put it down, leave it alone. A bit more titanium white, a little bit more of my Galkyd gel. Step back for a second. Now I'm just kind of feathering some of those edges so that we don't have such a hard effect in this clouds, but a rather subtle adjustment of that color. See how that's bringing that sky to light? At least I think it is. A couple of spots down here that might benefit from it. And maybe there we go. All right. Now it's a time to evaluate this mass of trees. There's actually a couple of man-made structures in here. They look off-white from the distance, so I'm going to add some ultramarine blue, just a little bit. Tone down that white, because it's reflecting, right, some of the other colors in the scene. And I'm going to put just a few notes of where those are. There's one over here. There is one kind of right here. And one over here. Now, at this point, I'm standing back and noticing these are way too light in comparison to that sky. So how do we fix that? Taking the paper towel, rolling it up. What I'm going to do is just come along here and I'm going to press in and then pull out. And with a new clean spot, I'm going to do the same down the road here. And finally, just a little dot here. There we go. And that pulls some of that color out. I think I want to take off a little bit more of that white there and there. There we go. Now the eye tells you that there's something there. Whether it might be a structure or a rock, there are these little places along the way suggesting some things are happening. So I kind of like that. Now, on this beach, there's actually a place where there's some lighter sand and the darker sand. So we're going to come back in and do something about that. Creating a little bit more detail in this section. And the lighter sand is actually the sand that's not being touched too much by the water. Titanium white, a little bit of yellow ochre. All right, let's see if we can kind of get this in. Once again, I'm trying to vary these strokes a little bit. Not quite as noticeable in some of these areas. There we go. And now I want to vary the grass plane there a little bit more than what we see. So I'm going to lighten that with some cad yellow light, a little bit of the ultramarine blue, touch of yellow ochre. Let's see what that might look like. That's too yellow. That, on the other hand, I think I like. I'll leave some of that darker on there, but I think that's pretty good. Still think there should be a little bit more darker green in certain areas of this midsection. So I'll take some ultramarine blue. Where are we on time? Okay. Thanks for hanging out with me. And a reminder, if you do like this content, please tell me about it by giving me a thumbs up and subscribing to the channel. This time a little bit more of the red, cad red light. It's gonna darken that green. More of the ultramarine blue. Let's see what this looks like. Yes, I think that's what I'm looking at. And notice how with touching it, connecting a few of those with the darker darks, gives us a little bit more variety in this scene here. I think it's getting more finished with this, more of a dynamic looking painting. There we go. Right. So now I'm pretty comfortable with this section here. But just to make sure, I'm gonna check on these. I'm just cleaning this brush off. Seeing a few spots I don't like here. There we go, that's okay. Now I'm going to go And I'm going to make a couple adjustments along the top tree line. See how I'm just kind of touching it? There's actually no paint on here. I'm using the paint that's on the board. I want a rather soft edge on these treetops. I kind of want the focus in this area here. So I'm going to leave that part alone pretty much. This way. All right. There's actually some rocks up along this area, so let's do that. I'll take my smallest Brussels Hog's bristle brush, number 2. We're going to take some burnt sienna. And a little bit of the ultramarine blue. And we are going to mix that in. A little bit more of the ultramarine blue. Don't mix it all the way up. And now we're going to add a few of these stones. So I'm just touching certain areas along here where I'm seeing the stones. Vary the brush strokes. Of course, as we go back, it's not quite as noticeable, so I lighten my touch. And I'm just going to tap a little bit. Give a suggestion that those are being carried out. All right, that's a little too dark, so what we're going to do now, we go back in with the burnt sienna, mix that into the mix with just a little bit of titanium white. And now I'm going to press it on top of, make sure you have enough paint to be able to accomplish it, on top of those rocks, like so. This is where the sunlight's getting it. Even though it's a dark color, there's still some sunlight giving some distance to that. Okay. Now I'm stepping back and taking a look to see if there's any final adjustments to this. And I do want to do a couple more things. So, and that's the sea line and this beach line. I want a little bit more of a beach. So that's my titanium white. That's my yellow ochre. I'm going to pull a couple more strokes in here. Step back. Yeah, I think that the color kind of works. At least right now I think it does. this is the area of the beach where you see a little bit more of that sand. And then it kind of disappears there. Okay, now I see some darker blue in the water. So I'm going to mix up ultramarine blue, little touch of titanium white, a little bit of cad yellow light. Okay, I kind of like this color. Let's see what it looks like. I'm seeing these darker colors closer to me and closer to the shore. Certainly down here. See how that's making a transition? And there's a few strokes like that. On the other side, I'm seeing a few a little bit more of that. Cad yellow white, just a touch. The ultramarine blue. Little touch of the titanium white, maybe a little of that Galkit gel. All right, I'm seeing that color. Coming in from this side. Just want to feather out a few of those hard lines I was seeing. Sitting way up here. Let's see, is that? I'll make sure that this is appearing pretty straight. And I think I'm going to call it done. I can make it different. Don't know that I can make it better. Step back and see. All right. And since a lot of this is weighted over here, I'm going to sign over here. So, once again, I thank you for joining me. And please subscribe to the channel. You can visit my website at davidwpoe.me, M-E, and that's where you can find available paintings from me as well. By the way, the nice idea is that when you see a painting like this done, it's going to be on sale in about a week or so on my website. So if you would like to have a kind of a remembrance, as well as being able to have something kind of fun to show your family and friends and visitors at your home, you can not only show the painting on your wall, but you could pop up the YouTube video and be able to say, hey, here's the artist of this particular piece actually painting this painting. All right, well, thank you so much for watching me, and I will see you again in the next video.